Okay, good evening. Welcome to the planning board meeting. I'll take a roll call. Gordon Brewster.
Here.
Mary Foley.
Here.
Peter Morton.
Here.
Sue Philbrick.
Here.
Laura Tenney.
Here.
Chris Olney is not going to be here tonight. I'm going to open with the cell signaling public hearing, and we're going to I know there may be other issues besides those that are subject to the site plan review, and if we can, if there are those that are obviously things that are outside of the site plan and special permit, we're going to push those to the after the hearing has been continued because Peter Morton has a time constraint, and I want to make sure he's here for the hearing. We're also not going to hear about we have a request to continue the hearing on the docks tonight. So we will not be we will be only opening the hearing to continue it, but not taking any comments about the docks until our next meeting. So if you're here for that, you're welcome to stay, but just to let people know, we'll do that at the appointed time. So I'll take a motion to open the continued public hearing for cell signaling technology. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
I
Sorry.
think we have to do a roll call for that. Gordon Brewster?
Yeah.
Mary Foley?
Yes.
Peter Morton?
Yes.
Sue Philbrick?
Here.
And Laura
Yes.
Tenney? Yes. Great, thank you. Okay, I'll turn that over now to Mark Resnick, our planner.
Okay, so we have the conditions that I sent out on Friday, and then Markowski has submitted additional revisions as well. So the first item had to do with the controlled construction and what that means. And whether the board should still have its own inspector to oversee some of the site work installation as it pertains to drainage. I did receive some emails, I believe today, from Paul Orlando, our building commissioner, as it relates to controlled construction. And it's not too long, I can read it into the record. And then I received another email from Chuck Dam a little later this afternoon as well, as it relates to inspections.
So just to summarize, Paul's, I think everybody got a copy. I don't know if people had a chance to read it. It basically confirms what the applicant had told us, is that this will be under construction control, and that affidavits will be submitted through the building process. Registered professionals will ensure it complies with code, and they will submit reports. And as part of the permit review, inspectors as well as the fire department will review the plans for compliance with codes and may request independent review for any unusual or unique aspects during construction. They will perform periodic inspections, both scheduled and unscheduled, to verify that the project is progressing in accordance with the plans. At the end of construction, after final construction control affidavits, they will do final inspection. So it's sort of a high, there is also local control in addition to the controlled construction. And then there were some attachments that I have not looked at. And then you want to just summarize what Chuck said?
Let me see if I can find, there's a couple different emails here. Based on Paul's email this morning, I am fine with the engineering affidavit as a certification of the install. We will also send our reps on site as their work progresses at certain milestones. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I say we get more culvert or utilities stuff in Atwater, then we would do more oversight. So He's basically saying on-site, he's okay with the installation.
And then there's also Concom has review, and then you have an NPDES permit as well that you've applied for? Is that right, Mark?
And what
Is it-
NEPDES?
What did you call it?
NEPDES.
Oh, NPDES?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that? Pollution elimination and discharge system, something?
Natural
what the N is.
pollution discharge elimination.
I can remember my environmental law from 40 years ago. So there is oversight also of that by DEP, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So, okay, any comments on the first proposed condition? At least, let's not try to wordsmith it, but do you have a copy, Gordon?
So Sarah, are we saying this precludes us having a separate site person? Is that what we're
Well,
saying?
we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, we haven't got.
Mark, did you say you have extra copies of more?
I do have extra
He's
copies,
still
but
fighting with
these
Zeno.
copies are what my edits of Mark's edits.
I just want to get this one. Do you have an extra copy of this?
Which,
Let's, I want to keep our discussion on based with Mark.
You want another copy?
It's this one.
Anybody else?
I'm sending.
Yeah, I have that too.
Yeah.
Do you want
Is there another version?
For your
That's
collection.
the one.
One's enough.
Sorry.
You
Mark,
want me to give Gordon this one and then pull it
No, I
up?
can bring it up on the screen.
Oh, okay,
Why don't I do
So we're
that?
looking at the one that says PV discussion 9924.
yeah,
Oh, okay. This one with the red?
yes, the one with the
Or a
little
header.
bit of red.
Okay.
Okay.
Come
So,
on.
let me pull that up so we're all looking at the same thing. That would be a good idea. That's a good one.
Mark, is it changed from 3 days ago?
No, it's the one that was put into
Into the
your
packet.
folder on Friday.
Okay, I was looking at the old one.
As soon as I pull it up, I can give you this copy here.
Okay, excellent. I'll make that bigger, don't worry. Somehow.
That's the one I'm looking at.
Me
Yep.
too.
Okay, is that the one I'm supposed to be looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the cost was part of this. So we just talked about number 2.
Number 2.
Number one on the one that was in the folder.
No, that's a peer review. Number 1, right? An outside inspection.
Yeah, I said 1 or 2 on the draft I sent out Friday. So after discussion and getting the emails from Chuck and from Paul, 2 will probably agree not to do number 1, and do condition number 2, which is what the applicants proposed.
Okay, so we would strike, we'll strike this language, the number 1.
Yes.
I'm gonna try to put this in.
Is 1 or 2, so
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
make the sequence in the rest of the document.
All right, so let's, so you're recommending number 2, this here. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna try to put this in the document while you bring up the next one.
Can I ask some questions?
Yeah,
on that one?
absolutely.
So, I guess my first question is for the general conditions, are we lumping phase 1 and phase 2 together? Are there times when we need to clarify for phase 1 and phase 2?
Well, I think, yes. We are looking at approving it together. They have submitted the overall site development plan for the overall thing. I think what we're looking at phasing is some of the off-site improvements for the intersections.
Okay. So, yeah, those are further down, but I just
Right,
want
those are
to
further
clarify that this is conditions for phase 1 and phase 2.
Yes.
So I guess with just looking up what 780 CMR 107 is, does this encompass that it's also the final control document and the construction control checklist? And then there's like phased approval documents and site reviews? I'm just wondering why we're calling out just the initial construction document.
That would be a question for probably Greg to answer.
Yeah, well, that's because that was an exhibit, which is the preliminary, but as you apply for a building permit, that's what that actual exhibit is called. So when you apply for the actual building permit, you provide an affidavit at the beginning that says, here's our submission plans, they all meet the Massachusetts, regulatory requirements, and then so when they go for like phase 2 building permit, the same process will happen again.
So I guess my original question stands, why wouldn't we also have in the conditions that then we get the final control document along with the checklist and other items?
I don't understand the question.
So the question is, this condition number 1 states, out of the Mass Law 780 CMR 107, it just plucks out the initial construction control document. Whereas if you look at that law, it also lists out a final control document and then the construction control checklist that requires the site reviews, and then there's phased approval documents throughout the
Right.
process.
I only included the first exhibit to reference the process, not the entire process.
Okay.
This, as to how we initiate the process.
Yeah, the whole process is under CMR 107. So
Okay.
he just put that one exhibit. We could put all the exhibits in.
Okay, yeah, so maybe we should add the.
It says commenced by the execution, so it means that it's begun with the initial, rather than it doesn't, so CMR applies, but it begins with that initial. I think that's what that says.
And that's fine, I mean, we can
Yeah, I
add
mean,
one at the
yes,
bottom
that's
to
fine.
say do the final
Okay.
control document. I just don't wanna narrow us in with just one document when there's really,
Wise Peter next to me just suggested, if you want to do it that way, you could put a period after 107 so that the project needs to proceed in accordance with the regulations and leave out the exhibit and leave out the commencement of the process. I was just doing that sort of for clarification,
example.
but it doesn't have to be in there.
I think the theory is that starts the process, and then you have to follow it, once the
Okay.
process starts, you have to follow the rest of the
Yeah.
steps.
if we could just be clearer with that, because I know when I looked it up, I was just questioning, why is there just one document when there's really 5?
So possible is to delete.
Does that make sense? That covers then the whole process?
Well,
could just
it
put a-
will be commenced by the
want me to just read it?
submission of that
Put a
form.
period in and make it
Yeah.
consensus.
But we could take that out.
Right, so I think you're right, we
You
just
could
put
put a period in the sentence.
period in the sentence.
And then say the process or building permit process will be commenced.
Now I know.
Take that all out. You have
Right.
to follow,
Take it
you have
all
to
out.
follow the statute.
Okay.
All right, well, why don't we have to fix this, so we will, I'm sorry about my mess here. I can't put it in Word. Okay, hours, I think we talked about those last time. Are there any other changes?
So our general zoning bylaw, Article 10, Section 45 lists out construction activities, and that's 8 AM to 6 PM, so you'd have to go in front of the select board to change those, not the planning board.
Those are the general bylaw hours that relate to earth removal?
No. for
To
construction.
construction activity.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, but I think what I would suggest is that we put this in the special permit conditions and we send a letter to the select board with this as our recommendation and ask them to
So this doesn't state for earth removal, am I missing something here?
No, it's not an earth, you are correct, this is the general bylaws has a construction activity section.
Yeah, and then it states that,
I went through that.
and then the other clarification is that it's also state and federal holidays, so it's not just federal in our general bylaw. So again, it's just not under the jurisdiction of the planning board.
There's some state holidays when work will actually go on, because not all state holidays are observed by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I have no skin in that game, that's just how our general bylaw reads, so, if you wanna get a waiver for that, I think you have to go in front of the select board.
Okay, I'll take a look at that, I didn't realize that.
Yes, Sue, sorry.
I didn't remember that we had agreed to the 6:30 AM.
Okay,
Had we?
I don't know, I wasn't on Zoom, so.
We talked about trying to get the construction traffic into the site prior to the school traffic.
I remember that discussion, but I don't remember resolving it with a definite time frame of 6:30 AM to 6 PM.
The other rationale for it is that we really have no residential neighbors. We have 128 that's very busy at that hour and very noisy, and all we're doing is moving equipment on site. We're not really, Greg can explain what happens early in the day, but it's merely, as Peter said, to not conflict with school traffic and at the same time give us a jump start.
So one of the things we learned, sorry,
No, go ahead.
with the high school project is that, and other projects is, people, the hours of construction is, people are arriving to your site at 6:30, even if you're starting at 7. So I think a 7 o'clock start is not unreasonable and is quite a bit. I know my alarm doesn't go off, it's sort of, there will be noise that travels. 7's fine.
Again, most
And
people
then-
are trying to get off the road by 6.
Yeah, I mean, with the high school project, one of the big things we had that you won't have on this site, I agree with neighbors, is the queuing of big trucks before the construction started and that kind of thing, but I think you won't have that.
That's really the more critical aspect is anything that's coming on and off the site. They'd like to do that very early to avoid, the school traffic and any other traffic that can happen, so.
Can we make that 7?
Yes.
How's the board feel about that? It's a question for the board.
Is this encompassing our noise standards as well? Or just construction activities? So we have a zoning bylaw for noise.
Right. It technically does, yes. Well, if you do the whole DB stuff, it definitely does. If you go to the boundaries, you're not creating noise past the areas of DB.
Should we add to this condition, subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen?
Select board. So,
I just want to voice my disagreement with the general statement that we don't have to think about neighbors, because we do. Because we have already heard from many people who live close enough that they're hearing the construction. Apart from the blasting that we heard about during our last meeting, there is interest in the rest of the construction and its ramifications on the people who live nearby, across from 128. So I think I'm uncomfortable every time that statement is made, that we don't have to worry about the neighbors, that there aren't neighbors living right next door to the site.
thank you, Sue. Great. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for phase 1, So I think are we gonna skip over this one for right now? Or this is the.
This is not
intersection.
Atwater Ave,
Yeah.
we're gonna skip over anything related to Atwater Ave.
That came out. You took it out.
Yes, yeah, there's nothing in here about Atwater Ave, it's just,
For the moment, that doesn't mean we have forgotten about it.
that's.
When you're on Atwater Ave, and I'm just reacting to.
Hold on. Hold on, we're gonna kind of get through a few of these, and then I'm gonna take public comments on the balance of them, if you don't mind, just so we can kind of keep this moving. We will make sure you raise your hand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you just explain this one, please?
So this one is apparently, currently MassDOT has required them as part of their permit to prepare a 25% design for a build out of a traffic signal at northbound ramps. Is that correct? So this is a condition that follows along with what Mass Highway requirement is.
So restating that.
It's restating that, yes, because we did talk about the intersection improvements.
Okay, great. I'm actually gonna just reverse my prior comment, take your comment on, do you have something on about Atwater Ave? Yeah,
Okay.
and say, could you speak up, because Gaia, our secretary, is online, and give us your name, if you can just stand and tell us your name and address.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Moores. I live at 71 Forest Street, and I just want to make a comment about something I read in the Cricket about 2 weeks ago, when you were talking about Atwater Ave and considering some of the options. One put out was to direct bicycles and pedestrians over 128 onto Mill Street. And I don't think people are aware of how dangerous Mill Street currently is. Putting more people on bikes would just be a more dangerous situation. So that was not brought up in the Cricket, and I wanted to make sure that was out there for public record.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Specifically, are there any comments on the hours of construction before that evaporates? Because that is an important, yes, go ahead.
Stephanie Rogers, 59 Forest Street. So I do feel like the hours should be approved and not just recommended by what, like your alarm clock is. And because the neighbors do feel it and it's disconcerting and we never know how large it's gonna be. Also, I'm curious about this, like that we're planning construction traffic around school traffic, but aren't we gonna have way more traffic with all the business up there? So are we gonna make people show up to work before 7 a.m.? So I'm just like
Post-construction
kind of trying to
traffic.
understand the priorities here.
Thank you. So the condition number 3 is the hours of construction. So I'm gathering you would prefer 7 to 6:30 a.m. start.
I thought it was supposed to be 8 a.m.
That is what the bylaw says. This is adding this is approving an earlier start than that. So you would be,
Yeah, I'm just not sure why. Because if the rationale is for traffic, there's going to be traffic from now on that's even worse than what it's been.
thank you. And then I think the other question is about Atwater Avenue, is something we are going to consider, but not tonight. We are thinking about how much additional traffic Atwater will have and how much construction will have on it. And a whole pedestrian and bike safety is something that we are concerned about. We're just not gonna find the solution tonight. Okay. Number 5,
Can I
sorry,
just-
any other comments on
Yeah.
those two?
So I have way too many copies of this, and I apparently don't have the latest one. When was this items taken out about or why aren't we talking about the striping of Atwater?
So we are going to talk about Atwater, but not tonight, because there's some other things. We're waiting, there's a whole bunch of other things happening about Atwater. So we will absolutely talk about Atwater,
Okay,
but just not tonight. So that's
okay.
why it's out. It's not that it won't be in the future. So,
So, okay, and then the one that we were just talking about, last meeting we had that the applicant shall be responsible for completion of a traffic monitoring study following occupancy of phase one. Why was that taken out?
It hasn't, it's still,
That's
it's
in
still
number
in
four.
there, it's still in there.
Number 5 right now. See it, look up on the screen.
There were two that were combined. Mark had two before. He had a 4 and 5, and they were combined now into 4.
Okay. Out of all the ones I printed, I somehow didn't get the latest ones. I don't know when it was posted, but I printed what was in SharePoint. All right, I'll try to keep up.
Yeah, thank you, sorry. I think this is, here, you want a hard copy of that, of the report?
Well, are you using it?
I'm using this. Okay, number 5, so we, I mean, this is not necessarily a final draft here, but, so this is basically saying that there would be a traffic monitoring study following phase 1. That's kind of what Mass DOT is gonna ask for anyway, right?
Yes, they're gonna ask for that, and, which is kind of evaluation of how the intersections are working, and what the counts are, and that type, and then they do an intersection control evaluation, which is, for example, like an alternatives analysis, where they'll evaluate the proposed design solution for traffic lights if it's warranted, or alternatives such as a roundabout as we had discussed before, and whether that's a reasonable alternative, or if there is some third design that might work better. So, so that's what that ITE, ICE study, intersection control evaluation is.
So sort of a duplicate to the Mass DOT requirements. Okay,
And so the reason why this is in here is not to tell them that they have to do it, MassDOT is requiring them to do it, but that we want to see those reports and evaluate them prior to any decision being made. So that the planning board can,
I think that was, it's kind of what you're, Laura,
These 3, 4, 5, and 6 are related to each other in that they're in the sense that they're about traffic patterns and traffic design. I'm just trying to get the sort of sequence of things straight and what we're asking for and what the goal of the planning board's review is. So at number 4, we're saying before permanent occupancy, phase 1, so before this phase, coincident to the work, the applicant's going to design 25% schematic design for traffic signal. That's one thing. And then we want to look at that before it gets submitted, or the planning board wants to look at it before it gets submitted to DOT. Then number 5 says, after occupancy, phase 1, a traffic monitoring study is performed. I think the planning board might want to discuss with the applicant at what time what's the right time to monitor traffic. Is that September, or is there an optimal month to gauge what the traffic impact is after occupancy, or is there a phased move-in by CST employees, whatever that might be. So I think that's
so
the
maybe
discussion.
in consultation with
In
the planner.
consultation with the planning board in terms of before the traffic study is performed, about what are the parameters and the timing and so forth. And then the number 6, which is the intersection control evaluation. I need to understand that a little more. I know, Mark, you were just talking about that, but I think I was thinking about 4 and 5. So how does that fit in to the traffic monitoring study and the design? What's the sequence there?
My understanding is that they do that they do the traffic analysis first, and then they do the intersection control evaluation afterwards, so that they know what kind of parameters they're talking about for traffic and what they would have to design for, what alternatives may or may not work for that particular intersection. So that's
Are we
kind
talking
of,
about the same intersection all the time? Is it always
Yes.
128 the northbound? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that this,
That could be clarified.
we could group these things by, this, so that for people who are not as intimate with this, we're talking here about the School Street 128 intersection. And that's why Mill Street is right there at that intersection.
Yeah, because it's not totally clear and fine,
Yeah,
it was not
so-
explicit.
I think we can add a
Yeah.
heading.
But also, do the findings of the traffic monitoring study, because we only took design for the intersection to 25%, which is appropriate, so once you find out the impacts of the monitoring study, then you wanna, the design
That's
wants
sort
to
of number
respond to that,
three.
right?
Yeah.
That's number 7,
Okay, that's number 7.
is that prior to phase 2 occupancy permit.
Okay.
Then there's the actual new study.
All right, so I think my only comments here are that we sort of make it clear that this is the intersection we're talking about, the intersection area, and that the study happened in consultation with the planning board, so we
I added that.
define some of those criteria.
I do have a question for the applicant, as it relates to the intersection. So the Mass dot requirement for phase 1 is to do a 25% design for the northbound intersection. However, when you do the traffic monitoring study and the intersection control evaluation, does that include both the southbound and the northbound ramps? In other words, at the end of the day, there could be something that might be required mitigation for the southbound ramp. And based on traffic volumes, when people are leaving the site and turning south. So do they look at the entire north and south?
Unfortunately, we don't have TEC here with us, but yeah, I think that their study will evaluate, the entire 128 intersection. But the only place where we've been instructed to do any kind of design is at the one that was that was the most stressed.
Right.
The rest of them had, had plenty of capacity.
Right.
Actually, the wording from the state is the proponent will mitigate the project's impacts to the Route 128 northbound School Street intersection by installing a fully actuated traffic signal with demand-based vehicular, etc. It's referring to that one intersection.
But what I'm saying is when you do the traffic study at the end of phase 1, once you're occupied, will you evaluate the southbound intersection?
It will, because what we're trying to do is evaluate the traffic, the new traffic coming to Manchester, and in particular to the site.
Right.
So what we're expecting is that there'll be a dramatic increase in the number of people turning towards Essex and then turning right on Atwater.
Right, but
There
I'm
might
saying
be
at the end of the day, it's gonna reverse. And there'll be more substantial traffic turning left onto School Street and then left again onto 128 southbound. So it may not necessarily,
We can
it
confirm.
may require some sort of mitigation, maybe not a full traffic light, but it may require something else if it's about, it may not require anything.
That is the state jurisdiction, and if they conclude that it's required, we're stuck with it.
Okay, well, and sort of to Mark's point, the state has these same
Right.
state conditions, so we should,
But the state will consider comments from the town on
traffic lights or
on
other
traffic
mitigation,
lights and
right?
other mitigation at their intersections. Some towns, my experience, some towns just, it's the state's intersection, whatever the state decides, and other towns are more concerned and want to at least participate and comment on the process, so.
Okay,
So Mark, if I understand it, you just want to make sure that the wording is in there, that they evaluate the entire intersection,
That's
north
correct.
and southbound,
Mhm.
at the appropriate times.
And if it's not required to be for any mitigation, it's,
To see what happened.
yes, see what happens.
We'll confirm that with TEC.
Okay.
Okay. So number 8 refers to adding, Mark, I'll let you say what it has to do with. This is the bike lane.
Well, it looks like on, this would be,
We didn't
Number
talk
8.
about 7, did we?
We-
Can we go back to 7, year 7?
Fortunately, it's on a page.
What we had suggested, in being consistent with the state, is that in the middle of that paragraph, that had initially, as proposed, we said the applicant will finalize design and install traffic signal infrastructure, which is what the state said. So we put the word signal in, because the state wanted that word, but you took it out.
I took it out because maybe during the, if something changes during the evaluation process, and they require some alternative to the signal, then you would be required to construct that instead.
With respect to the alternative to the signal, in the report that we filed with the application, it says that according to the TIA, a roundabout is not feasible because the proponent would be required to acquire property abutting the intersection to construct the roundabout, and it would significantly shorten the length of the Route 128 northbound on-ramp from 720 feet to between 500 and 600 feet, which is below Mass DOT's guidelines for minimum ramp length. And so they seem to take that off the table.
Well, in my discussion, so I did have, like I said last time, we had a meeting with Mass DOT, and that they would be amenable to looking at that, and it's not a hard and fast rule, that they do make they have, it says it's a guideline, so, it's not.
So, okay, so we can, what I'm gonna do is just note that cell signaling would like to see us insert the word signal, but this is, you can take that as input at this moment.
So where was signal after the installed traffic signal instead of infrastructure?
No, it's traffic signal infrastructure.
Okay.
But we'll so note at this point, traffic signals. Unfortunately, mine is coming out super small, but I'm getting it per the state language. Okay, great, thank you. I'm trying to keep us moving along. Number 8 is the bike lane from Atwater to this town line.
I am suggesting, if I may, that that provision stay the same, but at this point, since we have the other off-site improvements to talk about, the Atwater and
That
whatever,
we hold till,
that it say constructed to Atwater Avenue instead of the Essex Town line, because there are issues with respect to extending it to the Essex Town line, both with respect to design and cost, that are going to be in that basket of things that we're talking about
Okay.
with the town.
Okay.
I think that's, so I'm gonna just say hold on that one. Oops.
A question with some of that, is some of that the Mass DOT jurisdiction then?
Yeah, that's part of that issue. I think it's the width and the constructability.
No, but even,
Road.
yeah, just,
The portion
School
from,
Street.
the portion from the off-ramp to the edge of the state highway layout is their jurisdiction.
Okay.
But
Which they
that's not all the way to
Essex.
Black Earth and not all the way to Atwater.
This, to be resolved, okay, thank you. Sustainable features will be installed and, oops, any comments on that one?
If I may, as you know from hours of testimony, cell signaling is all about sustainability. And quite proud of that and is going to advertise that. We're happy to agree to put a display near the trailhead and with respect to the lobby inside the building, I think it would be premature to tell us to create something in our
Right.
lobby. So we certainly will be touting what we've done on the website for sure and in other venues. And we're actually anticipating a fair amount of publicity about it. But I don't think we really need, under these circumstances, to require self-signaling to put a display inside the lobby.
How about if we were to say a display of sustainable features visible to visitors and, some visitors to the building?
I think somebody brought it up saying that they went to another building and there was a display of sustainable features and they thought it was interesting that, for people who might be going to see that.
Sue has a comment.
And so that's where that came from, was from comments from, I don't remember who did that.
Probably from me.
I do remember this discussion and I remember the result, which was that we agreed with cell signaling that it would be a security issue for them because people won't really be spending time in their lobby
Right.
unless
Yeah.
they're working there.
That's why we did the trailhead.
Laura? I remember we were talking about the BU building, which has a big dashboard of sustainability. It's very cool. It's a more publicly accessible building. I think the intent, if it's signage at the trailhead and it can have a QR code or something that links you to where your website is talking, can be updated. I think that meets the intent and we don't need to say what goes inside the building.
Okay, great.
Any other questions here?
Yeah, a comment on the sustainable features?
Not so much on that. I just know there's some questions back here about the construction time. They want it clarified. Is it 7 to 6 days a week?
That was, Gail, that was Karen Bennett.
Yes, sorry. 28 Lincoln.
So the current proposal is hours of construction shall be from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. No blasting shall be permitted earlier than 8 a.m. Hours of construction shall be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and no work permitted on Sundays and federal holidays. During construction, all local, state, and federal laws shall be followed regarding. And we added to make a note to look at the whether or not the local zoning, our Manchester zoning for noise, and we added also subject to select board approval. Yeah.
I believe that you said you read 8 to 6 on Saturdays when this says 8 to 5.
8 to 5, I'm sorry.
And maybe that first sentence wants to say weekdays.
Weekdays,
Yes.
as I read it.
So 7 to 6
Weekdays.
weekdays and 8 to 5 on Saturdays?
Yes. So, just to clarify, if when you go home and you think about this, you can also send us an email. We do read them. Go ahead, yes?
Hi, do I have to stand up?
Yes, please, and your name?
Elizabeth Thomas, 27 Mill Street. I just wanna, I don't know if everybody here really understands what's happening on Mill Street and Forest Street, like what the pressure that's being put on all of the residents. You're talking about every single time we come here, it's more and more things being taken from us and given to cell signaling technology. It's more blasts, it's stronger blasts, it's going from 1 blast to 2 blasts. It's, now detours are gonna be starting on Forest Street and Mill Street for the water and sewer work that's gonna be starting. It's now increasing the hours overall for construction. And then also you just said for blasting, now 8 a.m. Right now the current permit is 10 to 2. So one of my concerns is right now we've gone from 1 blast to 2 blasts. I have no reason to believe we're not gonna end up with 5 blasts, 6 blasts per day. I don't know that. And the reason why I don't know that is because every single time I'm told something, something changes after that. I was told I went for a blast site visit, which I was very thankful to be invited for that. But I asked on that day if there would be, if it would be 1 blast per day for the duration, and I was told yes. The very next blast was that following Wednesday, and it was 2 blasts. And we've been told on camera, I've been told in writing that it would only be 1 blast. That changed. As for the construction hours, now you want to do that, and I live at 27 Mill Street, so I live right on that turn. I can hear the construction noise. It's not horrible. You know, there's leaves, there's other highway noises, but when you take that away, when those leaves start falling with the fall, and there's no longer that sound barrier, and there's no traffic going down 128, you're gonna hear that. And that's just one more thing, one more pressure point on this street. I don't know, I know some of you have seen the emails that all of us have been sending, and it's because we're hitting our breaking point already. And it's just not fair. And I have nothing against cell signaling technology. I think the world of that company. But it is not fair that you're building this on our backs. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I just get a clarification, is, on the blasting hours, have we already committed to a 10 to 2 blasting schedule? Where did
I
that?
think that's, I believe that is the requirement for the state, anything within the 250-foot range from 128. That's the parameters for that particular permit, which we have not obtained yet.
It's 10 to 2 from the state.
Right, from the state,
Yeah.
correct.
So
Yeah.
can I share?
But
Can I just want to clarify, so as the blasting gets closer to 128, then the hours will be limited to 10 to 2, is that correct?
anything within the 200, there's a separate permit that's required for within a boundary of 128, and that's been applied to Mass DOT. And that goes through, a number of different departments. So we're waiting for that, and once that happens, that's where the restriction between 10 and 2 is the only hours that blasting within that corridor is allowed.
Presently, you're trying to have your daily blast, middle of the day, 11 to 1, 10
That's
to
correct.
2.
Yeah.
And
Like that.
my understanding, Greg, was that the one day with the 2 blasts this week is to minimize the size of the blast.
That was actually directed by the fire chief a couple of weeks ago to have smaller blasts, but multiple.
Right. But that's only on one day this week, I noticed.
It varies depending on, it might be 2 days, 1 week, and 1 day. another.
So if your practice is to have blasting between 10 and 2, maybe it makes sense to have the blasting hours be limited to 10 to 2 in the special permit.
I would defer to the fire chief to see what the actual permitting is. I don't know it.
Why don't we check with the fire chief on that, Mark?
Yeah.
Let's add that, it's blasting 10 to 2.
Can I just ask, where did the 8 AM come from on blasting?
I don't know.
Okay, so it sounds like that should be an easy
Yeah,
thing.
but they've been doing the
Yeah,
blasting
but-
in the middle of the day.
Blasting at 8 AM is not feasible.
Yeah, that's not-
from a setup perspective.
Yeah, they've been,
Okay,
I don't think the issue is when they're blasting.
okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would
Okay, let's keep, so we can all hear the benefit of your comment, yes, in the back again.
So I'll
Mary.
just share what is the
You
conversation.
stand up again?
Yeah, I'll share the conversation back here with, I think, Greg.
Yeah, and your name again?
Mary Ellen Moores.
Thank
And
you.
he's saying, 10 to 2 is fine, but he's deferring. But, I would hope that, you will consider 10 to 2 as, it's worth, why to consider at 8 o'clock in the morning I had somebody in my house and one of the blasts occurred and they came running out and there's like, did we just have an earthquake? So for you, people that don't live on Forest and Mill, this is what we're experiencing. You're sitting in your chair, it starts shaking, your windows are shaking. I've had residual come down my chimney, you know, so just want you to know what we're dealing with.
Thank you for that input. I'm glad you raised that. Yes, go ahead.
Elizabeth Thomas, 27 Mill Street. I just want to point out, I know that week that we moved to 2 blasts, the purpose was to get to smaller blasts, but actually that week we had our largest blast to date was Thursday the 22nd. It was 0.325. Before that, the highest we had was 0.25. Mary Ellen was the only one that I know of that was home for that blast, and you were pretty horrified. That's the blast we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had whatever comes down your chimney.
Yeah, it's mortar.
More.
So that's the problem that they had over with the high school. So you guys really lucked out that for some reason, every single household that was closest on Mill Street, my house, all my neighbors, none of us were home. There was somebody in Maine, there was somebody in New Hampshire, there was someone in Martha's Vineyard, there was people working. Literally not a single soul was home. If anybody in any of those houses were home for that 0.325, I guarantee you every single one of your phones would have been blowing up. Because if she felt it like that at her house, she doesn't even live on Mill Street, she lives on Forest Street, then I can't even imagine what my house felt like. That is a massive difference between what everybody who's been complaining about 0.2 has been feeling. And I'm concerned, so I don't know.
Thank you. And I know the fire chief is monitoring that. So, Mary had another comment.
So I just want the residents to know, I emailed the fire chief and the town planner, this weekly blasting schedule that went out that had the planning board's so-called approval. We did not discuss 2 blasts a day. As a planning board member, I was very upset that it was sanctioned here that this was in coordination with the town planning board, and it was not. At the last meeting, we talked about 1 blast a day, not 2. So hopefully the planning board does not get misrepresented again. And as we go further along in these, I did pull out the Manchester Essex Regional High School conditions, and they had, I think, about 6 relating to blasting and demolition, and I think we can incorporate, or we should incorporate a lot of them into this, and hopefully will help some residents with their concerns of being notified, communication, level of blast, level of construction. So I think if we could do it for the high school, we can do it for here as well.
So why don't you send those suggestions to Mark? Let's keep going through the proposed conditions, so we get through. Permission, I think we talked about the granting to the trustees.
I have a question on that.
Go ahead.
Can we, I may have read the attached document incorrectly, but is this gonna be a permanent permission? It looked like there was a right to suspend it in the document. And
Pardon me?
if I was reading the attached legal document correctly, it looked like there was a section in there that at a future date would allow the suspension of the easement
Right,
to happen.
right.
Could we try to make it a permanent?
No. We came up with this whole concept of providing access to the trustees and creating the trailhead, creating the parking lot. We weren't asked to do that. We did that voluntarily. We need to make sure that it doesn't interfere with activities in the property, phase 2 or phase 3 or whatever. And consequently, we don't anticipate suspending that at any point, but it could become necessary. If it were a permanent easement, then we're sort of stuck with it. And this is voluntary on our part, and we intend to keep it in place That's only a safeguard if we have to pause it. That's all it is, and the trustees are perfectly fine with it.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out, that it's,
And that's why it's a license.
Okay,
May I raise a question about that?
yeah.
I also understood that it was a license, but I have I think a similar question that I perceive Mary has, which is, if we get to phase 2 and there's a reason why that license needs to be terminated or retracted or whatever, then we granted phase 1 based on this condition. So if that trail access no longer happens and we're at phase 2 and it's just discretionary, then how much teeth, where's the balance of, I understand that this is a gesture that CST is making, but on the other hand, we're trying to facilitate a sort of more regional, trail network here. So is there, I don't know that I have a suggestion, I'm just raising it as, if it only lasts through phase 1 and then it disappears at phase 2, that's a concern.
Well, we're not planning to have it disappear after phase 2. We might want to change the location of it. The property does have the benefit of an easement through the Brady property. That would and could connect to the trailhead. So there may be a reason at some point to modify it. And we're just trying to maintain some flexibility.
Right. So is there,
South Sigma is very supportive of the trustees.
yeah, I think we share that, and maybe there's a way to just build in some flexibility, but to say that, if a future trailhead access changes, it'll be reviewed with the planning board and trustees or something like that, but the intent is to maintain the trail access. I don't know if
Maybe we
asking
could,
for is reasonable, but just
Ask
consideration.
for a phase, it could be revisited in phase 2, should it need to be changed, so maybe a suggestion that it should need to be changed in phase 2 or something that it.
I just want to keep the intent. The intent
Yeah,
is
the
to
intent is to
facilitate
provide
public
public
access to
access.
the trailhead.
Maybe we put the intent. If we state, in order to, is the intent
Yeah.
to provide.
Right.
Karen, do you have
Yes,
a specific comment on this issue?
It's back to the other question, so I apologize. Karen Bennett, 28 Lincoln, I have 2 questions. On the hours, I went through this when the turf fields were put in. The construction vehicles were showing up at 2 and 3 in the morning, and I was hearing beep, beep, beep all night and couldn't sleep. So I had to contact Ann Harrison, I had to contact the police constantly, so I don't know if there's a provision for that. That's one. And then the second thing is, a lot of these people are already talking about damage, and as you know, we had damage to the homes that surrounded the high school. We brought that up last time and no one said anything. So is there a recourse for the people that are having damage? That's it.
It's possible just to finish the last clause and then go back to the traffic the construction hours conversation. I just didn't want to lose the thread.
Yes, please do.
So is there something we could say about the intent is to
Yeah,
provide
that sounds
public
right,
access to the trailhead network? or-
As long as we can reserve some flexibility, that's
Right.
fine.
Okay,
Add that.
I burden you on language, but yeah. I don't think we need to worry about the specific language of it right now. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that if there is damage, then it becomes between the lasting company and the homeowners.
Yes,
That's the
there's-
recourse,
there's a-
and insurance.
There's a process
There's a
for
process.
filing through the fire department, and then that gets transferred to the blasting company.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving through these here. Atwater Ave, construction, Atwater Ave, we kept free of mud and dirt and debris, sort of a general housekeeping. The drainage system, number 12, as, shall be functional or suitable, best construction, best management practices.
Could you explain the purpose of the last sentence? Seems like that's a detail within a larger set of
Right.
items.
Mark, that's you.
If
for some,
number 12.
well,
Are those depicted on the drawings?
They have.
Okay.
the question, why are we calling those out?
It's not necessary. It's really not necessary.
Yeah.
They're depicted already on the drawings, so,
I mean, to call those out above.
yeah.
I think we just talked about also that there's a lot of belts and suspenders on
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Should we, should this be for phase 1 and phase 2? It just says phase 1.
The site infrastructure is for both phases.
So,
We can add phase 2.
no, but it's for phase 1. I mean, the infrastructure is sized for, once it's done at end of phase 1, it's done for phase 2.
She didn't understand the timing of it. All the site infrastructure is happening for phase 1, prior to phase 1.
So
So it'll be
phase 2 is the
done.
building only.
Okay.
The drainage will all be installed.
Okay.
Question on that.
Can I add something to the stormwater?
That's Nate. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Nate Roser, DPW. Kind of just a minor thing, I would revise drainage system to stormwater management system.
Okay.
And then, I think we should reference the town's stormwater bylaw, which sets forth, all of the performance, and system, design parameters that they need to meet, which I'm sure it does, but I think it just provides a little more backstop
Okay.
for us to go back to.
Great. Thank you. Glad somebody's paying attention. Okay. This is, the order of conditions is a Concom thing. Do we need to include that?
Again, it's just another,
So you referenced that, I think more importantly, from my perspective, 13 references the operation maintenance plan and maintenance plan. So I think the point is we need to receive it, operations and maintenance plan. Should be a condition.
It's part of
That's
it.
pretty,
It's part of the design right now, the
Right.
board has a copy of it.
right, we have, but we need to receive it. And that was a high school, that was one of the conditions on high school. So,
we should have.
Yeah, and those are all things that are laid out in the stormwater bylaw, like everything that they need to provide pre-construction, post-construction, construction monitoring, it's a very detailed bylaw.
Let me ask you a question, Nate.
Yep.
Nate, would that include the green infrastructure on the site too?
Yep, LID. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's actually on the fall town meeting is a revised stormwater bylaw.
That would still govern this, even though this gets permitted first?
that's why
Because
it's in the general
law,
bylaws.
right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is just yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks, Nate.
so we'll reference the general bylaws.
That means we're removing number 13? Or is that for discussion?
I think, so you recommend removing 13?
I think if you consolidate them,
Okay.
12 and 13 could be consolidated. But certainly referencing the order of conditions, doesn't hurt anything either.
Okay. Why don't we, maybe you can suggest some language.
Yeah, I'll check
Yeah.
with the, and
Okay.
revise accordingly.
I have a couple of questions with that one.
About stormwater?
Yeah, and I think, Nate, are you referencing the MS4 stormwater?
Yeah, so the stormwater bylaw is incorporated into our MS4 as a town-wide. So like part of our MS4 work that we have to do the DPW, we'll have to do site inspections. So there's a whole litany of things that we have to do for our MS4 permit as a town, inspecting the sites. But part of the MS4 to come into compliance with the EPA is a set of bylaws that, are very detailed and govern everything for what we need to do for our stormwater management, for development, whether it's virgin sites or if it's, renewing sites.
Yeah, so just the reason I wanted to clarify is because in that bylaw, I think we might want to clarify that it states long-term operation and maintenance plan. And then it also states that for the first 2 years, we get a semi-annual report, and thereafter it's an annual report from the project. So I think if we clarify that in the conditions, it'll,
Well, maybe what we do is just reference the specific bylaw, because then we're not, don't have two things, especially if the bylaw has to be updated, which we can talk about under the other business.
I'll work with Nate to adjust the
Yeah.
language
But I think
to.
And
You're
since
right, by referencing the bylaw, then by definition, we have referenced the reporting and the operations and maintenance.
yeah, and then the planning board can then have a separate discussion because we've never actually done that, or we probably should have done it maybe with the school, I don't know, but we have not
We did it
been
with
getting
school.
annual reports, so, or semi-annual, so how the planning board handles that.
Yeah, good thought. Okay, this is the lighting levels. Mark?
So the key difference between what was submitted by Attorney Glowski and my version is that his refers to if there's light spillage that exceeds the intensity of the levels depicted on the plans, and mine is if the planning board just generally has a concern with the lighting levels or intensity or light spillage. And because I've experienced a couple of times where it's designed a certain way, but it still creates an impact. And even if they build it as designed, there's still like a unforeseen impact where some additional shielding needs to be added, and so even though it's technically correct, it's created an impact, and we've met with the applicant and had them adjust light directions, light intensity, or added shielding to lights. It doesn't happen often when you get such detailed plans, but it does sometimes occur. So that's the key, the kind of the difference.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak on two points on that. One of which is when you have an example is a sports field, which obviously, which you measure the foot candles of this light coming off the sports field at a distance away from the field, and there's no light. But yet when you look at it in the sky, it's a blazing football stadium, whatever it is, high school, Endicott, whatever. You can see Endicott's field from 5 miles out to sea. And so this, as you've written this, I worry that it's very unspecific, and maybe intentionally so, knowing you. No, because you're usually very specific. So I think I would like the remedy to be a negotiated conversation or some sort of, we'll make every effort to, or something that is also cooperative and collegial. Because,
Well, usually that's what happens.
right, but I guess I'd like to, I think it's because
we get complaints from
Right.
neighbor or butters.
right, and then,
That offers you the ability to require a change, and that,
Yeah.
after we spend tens of thousands of dollars on design.
right,
and
that's my
we're gonna
concern.
put in tens of thousands of dollars worth of lights to
And
just,
then-
for someone arbitrarily be able to say, yeah, we
I
don't
don't
like to
like
change
that.
them.
Right,
Well, it's usually not arbitrary, it's
Well-
usually for very specific.
Well, because the plans that we submitted
right.
were very specific with respect to the lighting at every location on the site. I thought it was appropriate to say in the event there is light spillage that exceeds or intensity that exceeds the nature and levels depicted on the plans. And then I had added it so that it wasn't vague. The planning board may require the applicant to cause the intensity of lighting to be reduced or reasonable modifications to the lighting to be made, i.e. shielding of fixtures causing such spillage. I had drafted all that in before.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's a little better because
Yeah,
it's a little
that's
more
okay.
specific and it references the plans that have been,
Otherwise, we're subject to your whim.
which I'm very concerned about. I've done enough lighting projects to know. So I think the intent is good, but Mark, so let's substitute, what
Okay.
number of yours is that,
I
Mark?
like Mark, but he's getting very aggressive.
Mark,
I missed that last sentence on
Mark,
your revision,
oops,
so,
Mark Glovsky's
yes, I'm
version.
okay with this revision.
Mark Glovsky's, what number?
Well,
His
It was the
number
old
12 is just fine.
Old 12.
Yeah.
His number 12 is fine.
Okay, okay.
Whatever.
So I have a couple
Mary, go ahead.
questions. So I agree with the vagueness of this. There's no time frame on this, so in 5 years, 10 years, I mean, I think we would want a time frame on it at least for you guys, not for us, right? I don't think you wanna,
What do you mean?
I don't think you wanna hear from the town in 5 years saying, you know what, now we think the lights are too bright, right? So there's no time limit, and I don't know what authority the planning board actually has to do any type of enforcement like this.
That's why it's kind of a mutually beneficial.
I mean, I think cell signaling could just kind of say we don't wanna do it. We're not enforcement, so we have no,
You do have the right to enforce your conditions.
Yes, you do.
okay, we've just never been in that spot. So I guess I would then still clarify, what are we enforcing, right? Is it, the lights, any lights, is it any time frame? Is it,
Well, they've given us a lighting plan. They've given us a detailed lighting plan and fixture types and shade. So if the shades fall off the lights, or the intent that, they're no longer, they're lights that are not dark sky compliant, those would be obvious things. And then I think
Sarah, can I ask a question
Go
here?
ahead.
So, Mark, you referred to a drawing where the photometrics were all
Yeah.
defined for the entire site?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're suggesting if it exceeds the numbers, the photometrics on those drawings,
Exactly.
then we have a point to talk to.
Exactly.
Okay, having done this in the past, unfortunately, I've been on the wrong side of this, but it's, okay, that's understandable. But it will require for us to go measure the photometrics on the site if we feel there's a violation.
Right, so I guess my concern with, I think Mark's language actually has some broader than just the photometrics, because, like I said, a football stadium, you can measure the photometrics 200 yards away from it, and there's very low foot candles, but the thing is still glowing when you look at it from a distance. So we're trying to avoid the glow from a distance,
Understood.
not the additional foot candles that you'd measure on the edge of 128, which will be low. It's the glow. The glow is the concern, I think. And that's hard to measure.
Well, we're not gonna, cell signaling is a daytime operation
I
for
know.
the most part. So the lighting,
Well, but
Craig will probably
Yeah, so
tell you what lights are on at night, but it's gonna be minimal.
And it needs to be objective. I mean, your definition of a glow, my definition of a glow
Right.
may be different. So it really is about meeting the standards that are on that plan.
that's right.
Yeah, well, the other thing I could see is, if, depending on, along 128, if the screening isn't sufficient, and there might be a glare from certain lights out onto the roadway theoretically, that could cause a problem as well, so. I mean, probably not, but,
Can I suggest in
so,
order to keep?
but I think the language here is sufficient, so I think that's fine.
I do, Laura,
All I wanted to do was to strike add the time frame, because I think with the other language, it's specific and it refers to the plan, but there's nothing else we have in here that expires at a certain point.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be lasting condition.
does that make sense? Okay, I want to try to get through the rest of these, if we can. Let's go to the last two, because they're a little easier, I think. Special permit shall lapse if the building permit for phase ones have not been issued within 24 months. It may be extended for 1 year. that make any problem with that? Okay. And then the applicant should prepare a plan to train public safety personnel. That was a suggestion by the FinCom.
Number
Yeah, go ahead.
16 is not applying to the phase 2 phase, is that correct? This
Well,
is
because all of
commencing,
the site work and all of the,
right, so this is
work.
commencing with phase 1, which includes all the site work.
right,
So that's the only building permit that's
right.
governed by this 3-year timeframe.
Yeah.
The timing of the special permit. We might want a special permit timing for phase 2. Is there any?
No, I'm not proposing that.
No.
I'm not proposing that. I just didn't
Just you're
want to,
clarifying.
I was just clarifying that it wasn't expiring and that you had to get the building permit for phase 2
Right,
within that 3-year period.
okay, thank you. All right, any other comments on 16 or 17? All right, 15. A performance guarantee in the sum of $250,000 to secure the stabilization of the site and prevent off-site damage in the event of the applicant aborts completion of the improvements permitted by the special permit. So I think the intent here is to make sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, that the site work is done. You know, that's our risk, right? Something you guys don't finish. If the building doesn't get built, that's not our problem. But the site work,
I believe the
Drainage.
purpose of this was to stabilize the site so
Right.
that if it was abandoned, that some of the improvements would be still
Right.
in place so that you didn't silt.
so we wouldn't have silt running off into the summer brook.
Right.
So
I
that's
did add a sentence that proposed a sentence on the tail of that,
okay.
that said the performance guarantee shall be released upon
Yes,
the issuance
that should
of the
actually-
occupancy permit for phase 1, if not previously released by the planning board. I think that's reasonable, and I think it can also be released in phase, sometimes it's released in, so release.
Sarah, there's no timeframes on this at all about when and if or when
Some
the,
things have to be completed.
yeah, the applicant shall provide a performance guarantee of the sum of $250,000 to secure stabilization of the site and prevent off-site drainage in the event the applicant aborts completion of improvements permitted by special permit and site plan approval. But do you want to put any constraint on that at all?
Oh, I mean, as far as when it should be submitted to the town,
Yeah, just.
probably.
I was asking a general question here.
Yeah,
To
when,
the
You're talking about
issue.
when it starts or when it ends?
right.
Yes.
When's-
So, when Mark's sentence would address when it ends, it's, you know, if you get a C of O for phase 1,
Yeah.
then the bond gets
Yeah,
released.
I see Mark's is.
You can say prior to the issuance of the building permit.
Right.
We can do that.
Could we just go over how the 250,000 was calculated? Like how, do we know if it's enough, too much? Where'd that number come from? I had that question.
I had left it blank. I wanted to make sure everyone was okay with this condition. Mr. Glovsky had, CST had put in that figure.
I think that, in consultation, what it would cost to,
To
Tie it up,
stabilize the
stabilize,
site and stuff.
I think it's probably generous.
Mhm.
I defer to Ryan on that one,
I would suggest we talk to Nate and Chuck and make sure, because they're gonna be the
That's
people
fine.
who are gonna go out and stabilize the,
It doesn't
The
make that much
sites,
difference.
um,
Yeah.
Whatever they think.
yeah, so, I mean, the question, you're already doing some work, but the question is, you know, if they need to go out and seed it and grade it and install a number of catch basins, then that's the concern.
reality is one of the ordered conditions anyway.
Right.
So it always has to be stable.
Right.
No matter what.
I hate that.
Go ahead, no,
Keep pulling
this is
on
why
this.
this here.
But the performance guarantee, this is Mark's words, the performance guarantee shall be released upon issuance of the occupancy permit for phase 1, if not previously released under phase 2. So this we're saying that all the measures for site development will be done under phase one, correct? So that's why we're tying everything to the certificate of occupancy for phase one?
All the major plantings, all the soils will be stabilized. The only thing phase two truly is the building proper.
I'm not
And
certain,
additional geothermal, potentially.
Yeah, correct.
so I'm searching here to find out, is there a reason to put a deadline or a date or a time frame at the end of this? Say you don't build phase two.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, is figure out how to get the money back. We've
Yeah.
satisfied, we've stabilized everything, it's all green, flowers everywhere. We need to know we can get the bond back, and that,
At the latest date,
at
that's,
the latest would be with the certificate of occupancy. It's objective
Of phase one.
of phase one.
Okay, what
And
if-
there is no bond for phase
What
two.
happens, this is purely hypothetical, what about if you don't complete phase one?
That's what the bond is
The-
for.
That you take the
Right.
bond and,
So there's no time frame that says when that,
no, we take the money, if they decide to sell to
Sarah
Gordon,
Green?
yeah.
SLV.
And don't say that. And they don't complete the building, and they walk away, we try to get them to come back and finish it. But in the event that they can't, our risk is that there's runoff, I see this, the risk is there's silt and runoff running off into Sawmill Brook, or some sort of other condition that we take this money, we hire somebody, or we send Nate's crew out and Chuck's crew out. And that's what we're protected against. The building of the building is not something, if they elect not to build the building.
Yeah, they build it, but I'm talking about the site development.
Right.
Right. Essentially, the
development
site
itself.
development will be complete before the building starts, essentially. All the infrastructure will be in place, the roadway will be in place.
Peter just suggested that this should be preceded by saying concurrent with the issuance of the special permit, we do it instead of prior to the building.
I was gonna suggest, yeah,
Because you want it in place before we start building the building.
right. Or a month after.
Right.
Or a timeframe after. Okay, thank you.
The stormwater bylaw does have a section regarding surety for this specific application. In regards to the 250,000, I think I heard people mention, not sure how they came up with the number, but I think you would typically, look at their cost estimates for the site development and base it off of that, come to an agreement on what is actually applicable, because you can get into a situation, if you're only putting in for $250,000, the surety is only going to be on the hook for that. If the cost to repair the site in the unfortunate event that they don't complete the work costs more than $250,000, then the town would be on the hook for that, any additional funding. So I think going, kind of seeing what their line items are for site development, might get us more coverage.
Yeah, I understand that, Nate, but their landscape plan is probably more extensive than what a stabilization plan would be, which would be the intent. But maybe we can, Laura's got a comment.
This is saying secure stabilization of the site, which is,
Right.
preventing erosion, maybe you're seeding it or something, but it's not completing the stormwater management improvements.
Correct.
Is that what we should be bonding if this?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the whole stormwater system to make sure that, like someone said, there's not silt running into Sawmill Brook,
Yeah,
or any other adverse effects that could potentially happen.
yeah. So whatever the schedule of values is for the stormwater management system
Exactly, yeah, and site work.
and site work, yeah.
And some portion of the site work, obviously not the water main going into the ring road,
Right.
but
If you decide not to put the ring road in, the stormwater doesn't work.
Okay,
He's talking about an all or nothing.
I think we're gonna need to continue because of Peter's.
okay.
But we have one other comment online. Roland Glidden, go ahead.
Yes, hi, can you hear me talking? This is Roland Glidden, 54 Forest Street. I just wanted to kind of echo Nate's concern about this performance bond. It just, $250,000 seems like a drop in the bucket if this site was abandoned and you need to do mitigation to make sure that there's, storm damage, contingencies. I don't know why that number isn't more like 2.5 million or even a bigger number than that. That's my only comment.
Thank you. I just added notes to say, let's think about that amount and, okay. At this point, I think Peter has had any other comments from folks?
Well, I have ones that I would like to add.
Okay.
Do you want me to send to you, or do you want to discuss
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Why don't we send it to Mark so that
If Peter is
Peter's
just signing
jump
off.
so we wanna continue
then
at this
we-
point.
Yeah, at this point, we should vote to continue.
Oh, no, he's still there. Sorry.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead. All right.
Like
Keep talking, just let
Sorry,
us
you
know
went
when
to the
you're
lower
about to leave.
right-hand corner. Can you tell us when you're gonna leave, then we'll know.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, so like I said, I referenced the high school build because that was I wasn't here for that, but that was the most recent big build I could think of. And so I had a lot of conditions, as I think Gordon and Sarah were on this. Everything from, well, we don't need that one. So there was a fair amount with the blasting or explosives for there. And so I think if we could add some of these where it's just some more communication, I think that residents are really looking for. Getting 36 hours prior notice to commencing blasting or demolition operations. I know we're just dealing with blasting right now, but demolition, wouldn't be demolishing anything per se, but with the other activities there, which could be loud. They did go to 500 feet for the high school, so something to discuss. They did have a bond with the fire chief for explosives, and I did want to ask because Mass General Law, Title 20, Chapter 148, has bonds for blasting permits. Is that part of this construction?
The permit's been issued, so I would have to check again with the fire chief as to what the requirement is. And I'm sure
Yeah,
if it was
'cause
required, that it was put up.
Yeah, the law says for bonds required for blasting permits, so we have never discussed that here, so
I can check with the chief.
wanted to look into that, thank you. And then they had conditions for emergency vehicle access plans and exits during construction.
That was such a tight site. If you
It's
remember,
tight.
it was like two buildings right next to each other, so I think that's.
But with kind of one way in, one way out for Atwater, it might be beneficial to look at. Comprehensive project schedule shall be submitted to the planning board. Noise level shall not exceed the boards of health 70 decibels. And then they did get on to other things like the where is it? This might not be from the high school, but maybe one for irrigation. I know you said you were gonna irrigate for the first year. But then maybe we put in the conditions that after the first year, it's just the on-site cistern well provides the water. I didn't see from the police chief the verified site security plan. Did you do that? Or the fire alarm system plan?
Fire alarm's gonna be handled by the building code.
Correct.
Building code, okay. They did, I just, from the high school, I think you had referenced that the planning board got that. There was also a geothermal, and they called out the recharge system, which we might want to do as well, and then the stormwater management removal of 80% TSS.
That's in the bylaw.
It's also in the order of conditions in and
Yeah.
out use.
And then again, the operations manual and just the things that go with that, operations and maintenance manual. But I can write these all up and
Or just,
send them to you. Or what?
well, it seems to be the substantive ones are prohibiting irrigation after the first year, that your application, or at least your, so just,
We have to talk to the landscape architect.
I think you represented that the first year, there would be, to get the plants established, there would be irrigation. Laura, you're.
We had talked about some kind of operations and maintenance manual for the kind of ecological landscape plan, which may say something about an irrigation. I am not on board with shutting off an irrigation system for after a year. We got how many hundreds of $1,000s invested in trees here, and we don't want them to die, so.
Right.
Very much, water management, sustainable water management. But we went through all that in the discussions with the irrigation, of the horticulture and all that. So I don't feel like that's,
That just came out of their documents, so I was just gonna say, put it in the order of conditions, that's what it said in your documents, that you were gonna irrigate for the first year and then go to well water, so I just thought that since we are, as a town trying to conserve water.
I don't remember well water being.
We're not,
But
we don't have well water as part of our program right now.
Maybe it was in the Weston and Sampson,
I also recall the landscape architect saying there would be irrigation for the establishment of the plants in roughly a year. But I think let's take the larger question, which is, should we create some sort of irrigation water use limit, I guess, whether that's from none to.
not an arbitrary one. I would say if there's a sustainable landscape, ecological landscape plan that is submitted to the town, that will have the goals in it. And then that is sufficient, to my mind.
There's a desire for long-term irrigation on some of the property. Should there, instead of utilizing town water, drill a well for irrigation purposes?
If you recall, we do have a rain capture system with a 30,000 gallon cistern that's designed for the irrigation. The outer areas where the embankments are with the mature trees will be, I believe our landscape architect had recommended 2 years of establishment. And then the other irrigation, which is just recaptured water, would be only for the areas within the building area. That's the way I understood it.
Yes.
So I think because their plan is specific already, and the plan, this permit will reference this plan set. If there's a departure from that and you decide to eliminate the rainwater capture system, you're gonna need to let us know, because the rainwater capture is part of many things in the application, which is gonna be referenced in the special permit. And I think I would feel comfortable with that being the issue where,
yeah, I mean, I'll write these up more coherently, this was all last minute, but I will write up the ones that I think merit discussion, because there's still some outstanding things in this Weston and Sampson memo, that we haven't addressed, so we can address those as well.
okay, so, go ahead.
Some time ago, you would ask for comments from the board members to go to Mark, and I don't know if you received all those. We received some maybe, but if there was a period for when we submitted comments, and then if there was any discussion about why some got in or why some didn't, I think that we should maybe sort of collect our comments and then have a period, because I'm just concerned about things coming in late that are referencing another project. I think it's, it's great to go back and see what we did before, particularly where blasting has been a concern. And we talked a lot about that last night, but I do think one of the strongest conditions, if we reference the discussions and the plans that we've already reviewed here specifically and keep it specific to the project.
Yep.
So
maybe what we can do, can I make a suggestion in terms of process? That we've made some great progress tonight on these. We still have the Atwater Ave and bike lane discussion kind of is still outstanding. And Mark is working on that. I see Darren has his hand up. We'll get to you in just a second. I think.
Sorry, Sarah, it's Peter. I have to go. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for
Okay, bye.
joining us
Do we
tonight.
need to move to extend the
Yeah,
hearing?
I think we can just finish out this little
Can?
process.
Okay.
Process.
Well, this is process.
Yeah.
Not.
Okay.
Process and not
Okay.
substance,
Okay.
right?
Well, what you should do first is vote to continue the hearing,
Okay,
and then if you want to discuss process, that's separate.
and when we hear from
But
Darren.
no more public no more comment about
Right,
the application.
yeah, so I think your comments, Darren, we're gonna have to save if they're substantive, but if they're process, we'll take them after we close the hearing. Not close, continue the hearing. Okay, so take a motion. Good, thank you for being here. So take a motion to continue the public hearing to the next meeting, whatever that is, September 23rd at 6:30. Should we try to get the harbor done first this time? No, we're close enough.
Is there a process timeline to close these out?
I think we wanna try to do the dock, yes, we wanna try to get these done at,
So you want to do it at 7?
I didn't mean like 1 hour of the day.
No.
When
No, I
are we
get it.
trying to
soon.
finish? Okay,
I think we're trying to finish the docks next time.
okay.
So, how about 7:30? I think we're gonna need an hour.
Okay.
I move to continue the self-signaling hearing to September 23rd at 7:30.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, second.
Yeah.
Laura, yeah,
I was only saying that, now, I'm not trying to rush the deliberation, but I know that we all have to plan to not miss a single meeting.
I know.
And so the
We're trying
longer
to
these
get
goes,
this
I just wanna make sure that I don't miss a meeting, that's all
Believe
I'm stating this for. I was like, I know this stuff's important,
well
we have a
aware.
lot at stake.
That's why we're not taking the docks.
Okay.
So we're gonna put you at 7:30. Is that a problem? Okay.
I'll take a nap.
What?
I'll take a nap.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing to September 23rd at 7:30 PM. Roll call vote, Gordon?
Aye.
Mary?
Yes.
Peter's abstaining, Sarah is voting yes,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Laura, thank you, unanimous. Okay, process, my suggested, okay, Darren, do you have a suggestion about how to handle your conditions on process?
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to flag that we did have a call with the applicant and with Mark last week, and we just went over, there's a few on-property items that were highlighted. So we had received all that information, so all the on-property comments from our peer review have been addressed. So I did want to just flag that there's no open on-property comments. I know there's a separate discussion on Atwater Ave and how that's going to be handled, but the actual site plan and special permit, our peer review is complete for the on-property portion.
Great. Thank you. And then are there conditions that are not, well, let me suggest a process.
Well, yeah, but you shouldn't really discuss
Okay,
additional
so
conditions.
my suggestion is that you make these edits,
Mhm.
send them out to all of us
Yep.
as soon as possible, like in the next couple days. And then to Laura's point, we all review them, think about it, look through all of our documents, and Darren as well, and make sure that there are no omissions that we would like to suggest. We have suggestions, edits or suggested additions, we send them to you, and then you include all of them now, don't exclude anything, but with a recommendation, your recommendation, that that those be, tabled or included. And that we get that to you before all of this happens, like by Monday of next week. So that then we have time to kind of digest it and additional comments from Mark Levesky can be,
Can we be included
I
in
think
the,
we
in the
can,
process?
yeah.
Because if we get things earlier, then we can hopefully get
Yeah.
to the finish line together.
And I'd like to have one document that shows, so, we'll, so we don't have two documents, it's unclear. Laura, does that make sense?
Two things, can we start sort of below the line, we got through these 15
Yes,
or whatever?
we have to talk about them again.
And then let's not keep going over those, and then additional new, and at the same time, when you're potentially getting new comments, could we ask Mark, and I think we would have only copied Mark, nobody else, to look back, because there was a previous time when you asked, please send your comments on a draft order conditions or special conditions,
Right.
and so
I guess I
some
would,
comments are definitely in there, so either let us know if you need us to resend, or please go back and look at those and add them to the list.
okay. So would you want people to, are you gonna find them, or do you want people to resend them to you?
Resend me,
Resend-
because
resend them.
some of those comments may not be
Germane anymore.
anymore,
Okay,
so, or they may already be included in something
Okay.
else, and so.
great,
We might just resend just to, because it's faster.
yeah,
Rather
okay.
than revisiting.
And then I'm gonna ask Darren also to review the special permit and to make any additional comments as well, be part of that process.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on cell signaling that is not part of the special permit or site plan review anything else that's outside of that process? Questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'll open the hearing for the Reed Point and Morse Pier docks, and then with a motion to continue it, or take a motion to continue. I'll take a motion to continue the hearing scheduled for tonight for the Reed Park and Morse Pier docks, and continue it to September 23rd at 6:30 PM.
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay, thank you. Laura, roll call vote. Laura?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Mary?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think we do have a draft conditions in our packets. Same process, if you have specific comments to add or any edits on those, they're in the meeting packet. I think they're in there.
What'd you just say?
We should have conditions that
There is a draft
conditions. So again, send comments to Mark.
So, just because I am not a special permit expert,
Yeah.
the conditions are what is listed in special permit and site plan approval granted to that document
yes.
contains the special conditions.
Yes, and the
Great,
cell
thank
signaling
you.
will start to take that form as
Okay.
well,
Yes, the approval will
Great.
start to take that same form.
that same form. So it'd be helpful, actually, we can put it in that same form.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So comments to Mark, and I'm gonna say, can we get those comments to Mark by, do people need the weekend?
Is this for cell
For
signaling
all,
or the?
for cell signaling and for, well, first Mark's gonna get back to us tonight's work. I think I was editing the one in our document.
We don't need tonight's back. I would wait for tonight's back before we
Okay.
send our comments.
Okay,
Yeah, you don't.
send your comments.
That's too linear.
We can get the cell signaling ones by the end of the week, and the others by Monday or Tuesday of the following week. That'd be good. Okay,
It's just cell signaling.
no, cell signaling by the end of the week, and the docks, the two dock ones also.
Docs, not
Docs.
DOCS, DOCKS.
The watery kind of
Piers,
docs.
piers, how about that? Docs ones, I'm like,
Okay, Gail has her hand raised, I'm sure putting us straight on something. Gail, go ahead.
Could you tell me who made and seconded the motion?
I think Sue made
About
it, and Laura seconded it.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you, Mark. So liaison committee task force updates. Harbor Management Group, Advisory Group is meeting tomorrow at 5 in room 7 or on Zoom. And I have forwarded them the Reed Park and Morse Pier plans, so we should have some input on those from them before we take up the final review of the docs. We've sort of took a break over the summer, I guess is the right way to put it. And now there is a talk about doing a survey of people's views about the harbor and so forth. So
Is that the task force or the?
that's the harbor management. We're doing the harbor management plan.
Wait, that's who you're gonna send it to?
I already sent it to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
But if you want to hear their comments, it's tomorrow at 5. I will report back, but
I, just as an aside, I went to look for them, because I think it's all highly intertwined, for the meeting minutes, and there hasn't been any meeting minutes posted for 2024 for that committee, or task force, I should say.
we didn't meet for a bunch of months. We actually have approved them and I have sent them to town clerk, so
Oh.
I'll check.
Yeah.
We're up to date on the minutes, actually.
That'd be
But
good
I
if they
can,
could get posted.
All right, no, I haven't looked, so that I will check. Karen, thank you. Yeah, Laura.
When the harbor group meets, will you also discuss the draft order of conditions, or are you?
No, probably
No,
just the
okay.
general.
Just what's in the proposals, okay. Just a question on process.
Harbor minutes. I mean, they're not all approved, but I know I've sent them. As I write them.
We're short of town clerk.
Yeah.
Right, but they've been sent.
That was a while ago.
Okay. But thank you for pointing that out. CPC, that's Chris, he's not here. Downtown improvement, any updates?
They also took a summer hiatus. Their next meeting is next week.
Okay. Affordable Housing Trust is also Chris. MBTA Task Force, updates,
I can,
Sue?
the MBTA task force never sleeps, never takes
Yeah, I know that.
We did have a meeting, which I missed our most recent meeting, but I think, Mark, you were there, and they went through and made some minor revisions on the proposal, just tried to streamline based on Emily's input, correct?
Yeah, Emily and I had met and we had gone through the zoning bylaw, the proposed document. And we removed things that were redundant to our already extensive site plan review. Design standards that we already have. There was like a whole page of things that are already under that. And then we moved a few other items around and reworded a few things that were confusing. So that was presented to the committee at the time. And so that'll be forwarded to the planning board for some meeting upcoming when we have time to, maybe after the 23rd, or we may want to, around that time, have a special meeting, maybe the following week, for just that.
And the only other thing to add is the communication subcommittee has scheduled a public forum for Saturday, September 21st from 10 to 12 on the town common. It'd be great to have planning board members there. It's going to be just a very short introductory presentation, but then question, answer, comment from the public. That's the primary purpose. We'll have the information on the districts there, the maps, the charts of all the specifications, but as always open to suggestions from the planning board of what would be important to include. So 10 to 12 Town Common on Saturday the 21st.
What's the time again on that? The time in the
10 to
morning?
12.
10 to 12
10 to
is a
12.
Saturday morning.
And it's gonna be outdoors?
Yes. And if it's not outdoors, the rain location, I believe, will be the Masons.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I'm FinCom, it's not on here, but I just wanted to give an update. They talked about the MBTA, financial analysis. And I have to say, I was a little confused leaving there, but I think that they asked Mark to, inquire about other consultants besides RKG. If anybody else is available. They wanted somebody to gather other towns' examples of their financial analysis. I don't think they officially came up with a plan how they're gonna do it or when they're gonna do it, but, so I wasn't clear on that, but they discussed it. You might have something more on that, Mark, but there was no outcome from that meeting of what the scope of a financial analysis would be. And then, I think it was at that meeting or another task force meeting, Sue, you would know better. The idea that we might not get this back from the state by September 30th, and I know the planning board hasn't discussed it, but I guess I would like to see the board discuss or have a plan in place if we don't get it back from the state by the 30th, that residents know the steps of, because I've heard it mentioned that the town meeting might be postponed or canceled. So I think we need to have a plan in place rather than last minute, go to town meeting, and then it gets canceled because we don't have enough time to review, we never got it back, whatever. We just need a timetable of where's our drop dead dates and what we need to do once we get it back from the state as a board, etc.
I have started Mark and I met to sort of map out the meetings between now and there's not much time I agree.
Well,
And
and-
also, so I think we are expecting some studies to come back fairly soon. And we'll see if the state meets their deadline, which is end of September. Yeah.
23rd, I think. 25th.
So you're right. And the reason I was looking at my phone is that it is possible that we are gonna need to toss in another meeting to your about planning, either a joint with task force or to review to read through all this stuff and get through the zoning. The only thing I'll say is that we are gonna send the zoning, if they haven't already, to town council, so we'll get that read before we hash it through, and that should be.
Council already
They did the first draft, but I think we need to send the next version, or you're in the process of that. So that should make it, and then it's also gonna have the HLC review, so, we're kind of looking at it, it's in its entirety rather than line by line, the way we have in the past, I hope. But I think we're gonna probably need to have another meeting. September actually is one of Ron's favorite months, because it had 5 Mondays. And so we have.
But one of them was Labor Day, so it's really only 4.
But he always liked those 5 Mondays, always pointed it out. So there's the September 30th and October 7th, which is also select board, I understand. But we have an extra week in there that we made. So I think to Mary's point, when things come back, once we know, which we should know a lot more in the next week or two about the timing, and then we'll have to make decisions once we actually know what the.
So I'd asked Emily about the timing and if EOHLC is keeping to their 90-day, and she replied, it says, my understanding is that EOHLC is keeping to its 90-day review.
Oh, good.
Good.
So,
Okay.
I did receive about 3 weeks ago a note from EOHLC saying that our application was complete.
Oh, that's good.
Which means they, you know,
They know where it is.
they know where it is, they have it, and everything we submitted was what they needed. So,
Good, okay. So I think you're right, its time is tight and we're definitely aware of that. Let's see how things shape out in the next 2 weeks, I think.
So, and one question with this, and then it'll be a question after this topic. An email that we got from Lorraine Iavani asked if the town had notified EOHLC of Newport Park being deed restricted. And I have let people know I will follow up with their questions, so that, since we're on this topic, have they been notified of that? Are they going to be notified? So
no, the property is on the state's list of properties that's eligible for the program. So, as we've discussed before, there's 177 towns that are zoning hundreds, if not 1,000 properties or more in bigger communities. And the state is not going to be going through deed, property by property, reading deed descriptions. So the point is, whether it's deed restricted or not, the zoning that we are writing and adopting does not restrict the use of the property. And that's what the state's concerned about, is what is being written and adopted by the town. Because deed restrictions can be lifted, they can be changed, town meeting can do it, the property owner can do it if it's a private restriction. So those things, apparently the state's okay with that. Just imagine if they had to review every single deed of every single property that's being proposed to be rezoned, and it'd take 5 years to go through all the communities. So.
well, and the reason I raise that is that because town council highlighted that in their comments.
They highlighted it as a
Please let me
concern.
finish.
Yes.
And so they highlighted it, so I think it behooves the planning board to address that. And I think if it's a known, we should have a contingency plan on our side, rather than having to scramble at town meeting or some other scenario. So I can't agree with that path, but if that's what you're saying.
We did do that at the last task force meeting. Richard and I had worked on how do we adjust the model to make it work, and for the loss of the units at Newport Park. And so we presented 2 alternatives. One is adding a few properties to the north end of Pine Street, and then adding a few properties at this end of Pine Street going up the side street, Bennett Street. And then making some adjustments to the densities in a few of the other existing districts, and making a couple of corrections for a couple little errors which added maybe 4 more units. And so we basically showed the committee that it was possible, and that and they were that's kind of where they left it, is that's what, let's not go down that road with extended discussions, because we may not have to, but there is a plan in place that was presented to the committee.
So can I, go ahead.
I just, there was I wanted to just add, there were no votes taken on a different plan or anything. It was just
Right.
discussion. I watched the meeting since I wasn't there, I watched it later. But what I wanted to comment on the worry that this was flagged by town council, I take a lot of comfort in the fact that when we run the state's model, it's included. Nothing happens to it. And we've hired this consultant who helped make the model, who's worked with the state, and she was adamant that we could include it. And so I rely on that and am confident that we won't have an issue.
The other,
I'm sorry.
just one other thing is, this has been brought up a number of times. We actually voted to send the plan with Newport Park to the state. So that's, I think, we decided that we were gonna send this as it was to the state. The second thing is, I also take comfort that the state has said our application is complete, which means that they did not require deed restrictions for parcels. If they wanted parcels, any list of deed restrictions, it would have been required as part of the application. And so therefore, I think we stay the course and see what happens in the next, unless.
Know in a couple
we'll
weeks.
know in a couple weeks, and we kind of have a contingency plan, but it seems like it's all indications seem to be that we're moving in the right direction, so.
Could I just ask that we get out on SharePoint, the new proposed version if need be, and that we have the latest models, the latest spreadsheets out there so that we know we're referencing the right data. I think we have a MBTA folder.
So I'm not sure we want to put out a contingent plan at this point, it's very confusing.
No, I don't not put it out, I'm just, for planning board members, if
It hasn't been
It has, I think we should have.
finalized.
I can put out the revised language of the bylaw, and I think that's
Yes, we
important
need
to get out to everybody. I have the red line version that Emily and I worked on, and I think that's important
But I'm just saying that the properties that were discussed, because I'd be curious what, if Newport Park has to come off, what did the task force who's, helping the planning board, I think it's fair for planning board members to know.
Well, I'm not sure the task force has agreed. It was discussions.
It was
And
But it's
I
possible.
watched the meeting afterwards, there were discussions, there was no agreement on this will be our backup plan and let's present this to the planning board. So it's just way too premature and informal, I think.
So I think the question is, was there an is there something that's possible? There are lots of things that are possible.
There are lots of things.
Right.
I
So
could
let's,
create another 5 acre.
Let's see if this what the state comes back with. They're gonna meet their deadline, and hopefully this issue will go away.
So September 23rd, not the 30th. Is that right?
It's somewhere,
September 23rd is our next meeting. But
yeah.
So we would know by our next meeting.
We might. I'd have to look up what the date it was officially submitted. It was June in the 20s, so I don't remember whether.
Then we only have 3 meetings after that.
Right. That's why I'm saying we probably.
Well, it was submitted after a select board meeting in June, so it took another week or so.
All right, let's hold on that. And then just another issue that Nate brought up tonight that we just should be aware of. I think, and what the issue is, recall that we moved stormwater from our zoning to the general bylaws, so it would have broader applicability and to more things rather than just when you're getting doing a building. And we use the state's model bylaw. So apparently the federal EPA has decided that the state's model bylaw is insufficient or inadequate.
Wow.
And so now the EPA is breathing down the state and the town's neck to modify the stormwater general bylaw again with another model. And Greg really wants to have that happen in the fall, as Nate implied. So happily for us, it's not a zoning matter, so we do not have to hold hearings, and it would be the select board that will hold them. But we will have, maybe even as early as the next meeting, because we'll have so much at the other meetings, we'll get Nate and Greg, it'll be a long meeting, to come and just give us an overview. Maybe if there's something written that they can give us as an overview to go in our packets, the stormwater. But that will be, people would like to have that on the town meeting warrant, and because we deal with some stormwater stuff, we should be aware of it. But it's kind of sorry, one last thing. It sounds like it's here's your bylaw, adopt it.
Are we, as a planning board, required to give an opinion? Does this fall within those things?
No, I don't think so.
Great.
Enough opinions on it?
No, it's just,
Right.
I'm not a stormwater expert yet, you know.
I think it sounds like it's a very prescriptive requirement.
Per town or per?
For the EPA is telling states, here's the bylaws your towns need to adopt. I don't know, just make a state law, but whatever.
So Sarah, in that particular case for CST, the reference is to the new?
That's why I wanted it to not be
Okay.
super specific. We want it to be to the general bylaw stormwater section, because that might change with this change, but then it might change.
Just came out. Well, in a month ago.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why we want to make sure that the special permit language doesn't reference an old requirements, but then,
Got it.
CST is already doing so much with stormwater that I'm not fearful that new language by the EPA that says, percent phosphorus removal and all that, but they're not already meeting that.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna push it to towns to comply. But the easiest way to comply is with a new build by a sophisticated developer like
Right.
this,
Yeah,
The retrofit
there's a
stuff
lot
that's
of
hard.
burden on towns to comply.
Yeah.
The treatment of,
But your existing parking lots and all that kind of stuff, that now gets governed by general, which is
right,
good in terms of water quality, more burden on the town, but
Right.
it's really not, it's not gonna be projects like this that are building it ground up and
right.
are dealing with it.
I'm not really worried about the
It's not
high
gonna affect.
school, the other two biggest projects in town are high school and Memorial School, and there's best management practice, stormwater catchment and treatment and all that, but we have other parking lots
Sure.
of size,
Sure, stuff going right in the
Yeah.
ocean.
so,
Along the bylaws, I think the planning board needs to discuss the ADU bylaw from the state, and we're gonna have to change language in our bylaws, and I think we might get in a pinch if we don't do it before the February issuance of the ADU state mandate, so if we can have that at our next meeting as well.
I'll have a lot more information, I'll know a lot more about that for your next meeting, so if you want, I can.
So is there already somebody in town drafting an ADU
Not yet,
bylaw?
not yet.
okay.
Who would be drafting it besides the planning board?
I would probably be the person to draft it for us, but, so again, we can put it on as a discussion item for the 23rd. Not sure whether it absolutely necessarily has to. I'll know a lot more. There's a bunch of training things coming up and other things. I haven't really followed the bylaw up until now, so by the 23rd, I'll be able to advise you whether it's something that we absolutely have to do by February, or whether it's something that can
We do in April?
till April. That's
That
correct.
would be nice.
Well, if we wait, we just have a period of time where we can't put our personal stamp on it of how we want it for the town. So I don't know why we would wait if we're doing other bylaws, the same meeting.
Well, the meeting is in November. And so why we would wait is that we don't have a draft even yet, and we know how long these things take to churn their way through draft to final. And are there regulations yet?
Yeah, there are.
Can you put those in our packet for us? That'd be great. So we may have to.
We'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll
We'll
see.
see.
Okay, great. We'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting as well. I'd like to try to get those, like that, and decisions made on a couple of those things. And maybe get advice from the town council on that one too. Good. Any other, things, updates? Any public comment? Okay, approval of minutes. We have July 22nd and August 12th.
I didn't see August 12th.
You do not have August
Oh,
12th,
okay.
and July 22nd was put in late. I apologize.
I didn't see either.
Okay, yeah, I was doing it this weekend, so I guess, unless we have a critical mass of people who can,
I looked at them.
I read the July 22nd.
okay. Do you wanna take a minute and look at them, or should we do that next meeting?
We can look at them
I have not
live if
looked
you
at
want.
them.
I mean, if they don't.
What?
We can look at them live together if you want. If
Yeah,
they're not in
I'd
the
rather not do
packet
that.
by today, Friday, then
Okay,
I
okay, let's,
see that.
push that off, Gail, and then, make sure we do those next meeting. Okay, any other business?
I do.
What?
I do.
Okay, good.
I know everybody wants to go, so I will,
Alright, it's early.
but, I'd like to ask that we get correspondence back on our agenda. We used to list the correspondence that we received and the topic. And this meeting with the public hearings and stuff wasn't conducive to it, but I do respond to people saying I will raise their concerns at the planning board meeting. I know residents are extremely frustrated that they have questions, they send emails, they ask questions. I'm sorry, that was repeated. And it's dead silence. So I think it's respectful to acknowledge the receipts of these and to address the questions in them. We don't have to go necessarily through people's opinions if we don't want to, but, you know, we've had, I think, 5 on blasting. We've had a bunch on the docks. We've had financial impact study questions. We've had pedestrian and cyclist access along Atwater. You know, these are all topics we're discussing, and we just blatantly ignore residents' input. And people may read them, but they don't come up in conversation at a meeting. And I hope other board members would like to see that change as well. And if you want to go through the questions now, I'm happy to. I have them highlighted and underlined, so at least people would think that we're paying attention, or when it's relevant during the
Are these coming directly to you, Mary?
No.
No, they're coming to the planning board email, which you
You might
still
not
aren't
have it
getting.
Get it.
But we need that, we need
I'm
to.
looking at them.
There's a
You're going
lot.
through this
So,
sheaf of things.
Gail has her hand up. Let me take Gail's comment and then.
The only emails we had for this period of time were 7 emails from Lorraine Iavani, and they are in SharePoint. If you are receiving other emails on subjects that I know nothing about, I can't do anything if you do not forward me emails you receive.
Okay.
So I didn't look at I just get them at my town email. So the day after last meeting, we had, I think, 5 emails on blasting. I thought you were CC'd on them. I'd have to look.
Okay, so, but.
No, I did not. I have not received any emails on blasting. I do have the emails on the dock because Bion sent me those. But I have nothing, I received no emails on blasting.
So I don't know who forwards them to you. I know the other planning board members received them. I don't know what the process is.
So,
Happy to
I
forward them to you.
do read all the emails that come in. And if there are topics that are new, I flag them, but I think the topics that I've seen so far are topics that we have discussed. So financial analysis has been discussed, blasting's been discussed, pedestrian safety has been discussed at Water Avenue. Fueling at the dock, which at the docks has been discussed. Those are the ones on the top of my head. So I think it's one of those challenges with our I do think Mary is correct that we should take citizens' emails seriously and read them. But I'm not sure I agree that we have to address them all in line by line or questions. It's hard to, if every question gets answered, it's maybe Mark, advice on how to handle this.
So technically, when people send you stuff, questions and things, technically you really only have to respond to requests for public documents. People asking your opinions, or what's the board gonna do about this, or what are you gonna do about that? You do not have to respond. They're asking for your opinions about things. You sit as a board and make a joint opinion decision. So you can choose to have individual conversations, whether it's by email or by voice, phone calls with people, that's your choice. But you do not have to respond personally and individually to every question that comes in. So, because it can be very time consuming to do so.
Well, I put blasting in a folder, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 emails that I read. But I think we've had last discussions about this here, and so.
And the public comment is meant to be just that, to inform you, so that when you do hold those discussions, you're aware of concerns of people, whether it's whatever the issue is, so that you know what those concerns are, which is why you put it in SharePoint so you can all read it. But to respond individually to lots of questions is not, is a little kind of going beyond the scope.
Well, the other thing is we're getting copied on because 39 people were copied on that email.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting the thank you and the, we're party to all of those.
I didn't count those, but I think if, yes, you look at the letter of the law, is it a planning board member requirement to address this? I think it boils down to what kind of board do we want to be. And as a board, if you're saying you don't want to acknowledge these at a public meeting, I don't think residents are going to wait till 9 o'clock for public comment. I am more than happy to answer, and I have with some of them, my opinion, or send emails to town employees to try to get answers for residents. I think it just boils down to what kind of board do we want to be, and I think completely ignoring it on the agenda, completely ignoring it at a public meeting is disrespectful. To me personally, other people have differing views of how to handle this, so I am just voicing my opinion, asking if other board members agree with that or not, or do they want to just business as usual and kind of ignore what gets sent to us.
Gail, we used to have them on the, is she still on yet? We used to have public, a list of correspondence on, I think Ron used to acknowledge correspondence with a list. Did you
You
prepare?
had a section, you had a title correspondence, and when we adjusted and shortened the agenda, correspondence was not included. But we can add it back, but I didn't, if I do not have the email, and it's, by the way, the emails are also, if the email is a single email, it can be managed in the meeting packet. If it is a series of emails and it is 30 pages long, and believe me, several of the emails I have received are multiple pages long, it's virtually impossible to put that in the meeting packet. The meeting packet would be 200 pages long. If I don't have the email, I can't list the emails. We never listed each email, each bit of correspondence. All we had on the agenda was correspondence.
That's, I mean, you can go back and look at the agendas, it's just not true. We used to list out the person that sent it, and then at times, and it fluctuated, we would list out the topic. So people looking at the agenda would know what residents were concerned about or writing in about, or happy about.
I've been doing this for 4 years and never did that.
Mary, you looked in detail at the correspondence. Are there any topics that, like I said, I've read them all, but that I missed, that we have not discussed at all?
I think there's topics or specifics. I mean,
Topics.
the topics are blasting, harbor, MBTA financial studies. I mean, this is just the past couple weeks, so the question that I asked about Newport Park and EOHLC and the
We've answered that one tonight in our meeting. I mean, a lot of these things come up in our,
well, I just asked.
Yeah.
Because it was an email. The fueling station,
we did not take the harbor up tonight. That was
Well, we
certainly
discussed that
last.
last time.
Right.
I had specifically addressed that.
So again,
Diane also answered that email, sorry.
So
Mary, go ahead.
I'm getting the gist of, rather than, oh, that's a great idea, we're looking for reasons why it's not. So I have said my piece and I will leave it at that. It's disappointing, I'll be honest with you, but.
So I'm trying to understand, your request is to list out each piece of correspondence and the topic on our agenda?
Yeah, like we used to, and I'm happy because I went through them today, the agendas. I can send people examples, what we used to do, and because lots of times we don't have any correspondence, but when you have two public hearings going on, you're gonna get an uptick in correspondence with people's comments, questions, and concerns. And
would you be willing to take the letters that come in and make sure we save them to the SharePoint, maybe make a subfolder in a meeting of correspondence so that we make sure all the correspondence gets into the meeting folder?
that's irrelevant of the point that I'm bringing up. If somebody wants to take them from the email and put them in the folder, fine. But my point is to address them at a meeting and address residents.
But I guess my point is, if there's something new or a point that we haven't heard, by all means, I think, we all received an email from John Smith. He raises a point we haven't considered before, that Atwater Ave should be painted pink, whatever. That we have, I agree with you that we have an obligation to read the emails. But if the question is that pedestrian safety on Atwater Ave is a priority, we're discussing that actively. And so, go ahead, Laura.
If I could make a suggestion, seems to me that the letters that come by email are somewhat in kind to the public comments, just in a different format, where we listen, it's part of a larger discussion that the board is having. We very much try not to have a kind of back and forth on a like one-to-one basis, but we do try to discuss a topic. So perhaps if and I also, you know, we are a board and we discuss as a board, and we want to be careful not to be having these kind of offline discussions that by, you know, that could evolve into mistakenly having a meeting by having too many people on it, or by seeming to just, for me, I would feel uncomfortable about having discussions outside of the planning board forum. So
You would not
maybe-
feel comfortable, or would
I
you?
would not feel comfortable having a kind of ongoing substantive discussion for something that is put to the planning board, and the planning board is all, they're not writing to me, they're writing to the board, right? And so, you know, perhaps if there are correspondence received and we just list out sort of high-level topics, and then we have those on the agenda, you know, blasting is one, and so blasting came up in the last, you know, batch of correspondence. Let's talk about that for a few minutes, you know, and we sort of synthesize, right? So we don't have this sort of specific, you know, one back and forth going on. Maybe that would be a way to address, so that people know that their correspondence is getting aired, but it is not a, you know, we're not trying to have a debate, we're just trying to hear people's comments and reflect on them as a board together. The other thing I would say is that maybe this does get captured in the meeting minutes, again, at a high level, and so because everybody's busy and the board minutes don't always get in the packet, we can spend a few minutes at the end of the board meeting if everybody hasn't read them, or we want to just go through it live, look at it, discuss anything that needs discussing, and approve the minutes, so that way they get out faster as well. So that as the meeting minutes, if emails come in, they're, you know, they're on the agenda, at least in terms of topic and sender. And then, or just, you know, list of senders, list of topics, you don't even have to map one to the other. And then at the meeting minutes, we can have a place where we discuss correspondence if there was any further discussion. That might be a way to just kind of get it on the record.
Synthesize it, yeah.
Synthesize it.
And I would suggest that Gail does not need to put the email correspondence in the meeting packet. She's making a PDF
I agree.
of the meeting material for the public. So when you go, you can go online and you can click on the meeting material. So I don't think that needs to be the 15 blasting emails and the, you know, I think we can.
But when she gets an email, she forwards it to the
Yeah, she
entire
does
board
that.
when she knows there's an email happening.
And blasting, my assumption was that the fire chief was in this, he's responding to them. So, he's the blasting person, so
I haven't seen his responses.
James, he says,
He responds to residents?
yeah, he has responded, Saturday at 1:24. James McNeely, he has several of them, you're on that.
Are we all on that?
I must admit, I'm having a challenge like Sue is to what we're supposed to do though. Would you like us to respond to each one of those comments?
No,
in a
I would
public
like
forum?
for them, and they should not be in the meeting packet, because then if you're just cutting and pasting, you've got people's personal email addresses and stuff. That, of course, would not happen.
But it is public, wait a minute.
Yeah,
It is absolutely public.
Well, of course, the content is, but again, we can do
People's
things.
email address, if they send us an email and it comes, it's absolutely public. I mean,
I'm
that's
saying
why
we can-
we don't
we
want.
can publicize them and be respectful and take the emails off, but besides that, my point is that we do nothing. So do we have to sit down as a board and discuss how to respond? No. But when there's, you know, we have a discussion one night and the next day we get 5 emails, I think it merits raising that in a meeting and saying, we got 5 emails, these are the topics, these are the issues, these are the questions, these are the concerns, whatever, right? Because we're here for the public and they send us stuff and people listening in will have no idea we get correspondence, or have no idea there's outstanding questions. And then the people that send the emails in, they feel as if it goes into a black hole. And so what happens is people just tune out. And, we think, oh, nobody cares, nobody's paying attention. Well, they probably did pay attention, they probably did send emails and just said, forget it, nobody's listening. So I am trying to right that ship, but it's very, very hard process. And I can respond to emails, that's.
Then it becomes your opinion, your personal opinion.
Of course, and that's what I state
That's
on
the
it, there's no
challenge.
issue with a quorum or anything like that, but if we can't, even as a board, say, yes, we're gonna address this in public, then I'm not gonna just continue on the path and ignore them.
What would the harm be in that, Sarah? If we got 5 emails about blasting, don't mention the individual, just note that the subject matter says there's issues with blasting, this is how we're
Trying to
doing
do a
it.
little better job, I think, on trying to acknowledge the emails. What I'm concerned about is making a pledge that we're going to, itemize every single
So-
email. I think
so
the pledge
no,
is that,
yes, I-
if there's new material, if somebody is raising something that is new, I feel very strongly, and we haven't heard, a comment that we haven't heard, to me, that is, or an opinion that we haven't heard. I mean, we have heard I have yet to see recently an email that says something that is, or something that's not on our agenda that, I don't know, we get a lot of emails.
So, a couple things. One, if we get emails that are specific to an application, or a question or a statement about an application, so John Smith writes about self-signaling, I support the project, but I'm a little concerned, am I gonna see the lights from across the highway, are they gonna be blah, blah, blah? And I just wanna make sure you guys consider that. That's kind of like a typical comment letter from someone who can't attend a meeting. A letter like that in many towns is just read into the record at the beginning of the, opening the next hearing of this is the correspondence that we got, and just read it into the record, and it usually takes a few seconds and it's done. And, you may discuss it, or you may go, well, we already talked about lighting, or we're gonna talk about lighting at the next meeting, or whatever. A lot of the other correspondence is just general correspondence and comments about what we're doing on other projects we're working on, whether it's a zoning thing or something like that, a policy or our own bylaws, that type of stuff. Those are things that should be shared in SharePoint, but not necessarily placed on agendas or topics of discussion until such time. I mean, you now are aware of it. Somebody doesn't like the fact that we're writing a bylaw on a particular topic. You know that, but if something the board's already decided on, or if they think that there's a specific concern about an element of that, you're aware of it. So, but I don't think those items necessarily have to be on the agenda and read and et cetera.
So those that are related to the special permits should be
An open application that is specific to and germane to the topic.
Can we
being
summarize them
discussed.
rather than reading them into the record unless,
You can.
lot?
Yeah, you
Read
can.
into
You're
the
not
record.
required to. It's as long as it's,
Would you be willing to,
available.
Mary, to help make a list of those that have come in for the cell signaling and the docs so that we can acknowledge those at the next, in the next hearing? We had an email from Lorena Ravani about opposing fueling on the docks. We had an email from, if you could take and summarize those lists, that, I think that would be very helpful.
So for all the emails that we receive,
Related to the permits, but sure for all.
The open special, the special permit,
permits,
open
with
hearings.
Yeah, which is the docs and the cell signal, let's start with those. I mean, you can,
so you don't want to acknowledge other emails, just
well, let's start with those to,
special
for
permit.
the next week and try to characterize those going forward that come in.
So what
either in
I'll
the
do
past.
is I will send
Make a
to
list.
Gail examples of this year and last year of how we used to have our agendas. And so we can get back to the first topic is acknowledging receipt of correspondence and list them out, correct?
I think I was saying something different. I was suggesting that for cell signaling and for the open hearing for Reed Park and Morse Pier, 3 different special permits, that we have a list, that you type up a list that says, Lorraine Iavani, this date,
And a quick
would like
synopsis.
to have a summary of the financials for cell signaling. And then we can say, we had a comment that Lorraine believes that the financials are important for us to review. So we can kind of just go through them in a summary fashion.
Sure, and I agree with that
Um,
part, but also have it on the agenda so residents know if people are having concerns or not, or people are writing in or not.
So I'd like to suggest we start with the special permits. I hear what you're saying, and then we can try to get back to that if people think it's important. But given that it's a large volume right now, if we can at least start with the special permits. If you want to do both, that would be fine, I think. But let's start with the special permits. If you could summarize them, that would be really helpful.
So I guess my last question is, who decided to take it off the agenda?
I did. I was trying to shorten the meetings.
Well, the agenda just lists the correspondence. So it's unknown to me why we wouldn't want people to know that residents write in. But
Yeah, there was
So
a
what
lot of
happens,
flack.
what happened to that, Mary?
But-
That's the list there right there. Did you address each one of those?
No,
with a
we just
complete-
No,
acknowledge
we
them.
would usually just, but
Acknowledge
you
them.
could say, okay, there was a
Acknowledge it.
public
Yeah.
hearing
I think
notice from Wenham.
you're right, it's a courtesy.
And
But
you,
except, unless it's related to a specific application, you
Right.
often end up in an extended discussion.
We didn't, we
And
just
when you
acknowledged
have
them.
lots of projects and things that you really need to focus on, you end up in an extended discussion about
No.
some topic that's
We didn't-
really
we did-
not
we would just
germane.
discuss
acknowledge.
anything, it was just listed, and again, it's transparency, it's open government.
Okay, I think I hear
We've
you.
chosen not to.
Well, I think we can get better. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, I think it's just a little overwhelming right now, so.
See how
Make
it
it fit.
works.
Yeah.
I do have to say, when Mark brought up, I was feeling a little soreness in my arm today, and then the scab was over, and then Mark just pulled it right off. About people being unaware, if someone's thinking about the glow of the light, that little light dome that's gonna sit over the project. I know we're gonna say it doesn't exist or it won't exist, and people don't need to be aware of it because it's not gonna happen, but it is. It is, no matter what we do, it's gonna be at some level, there's gonna be a light glow in the horizon here. And so I hate to have, but the reality of that and the promises we make, such as when she said, when that lady said she was not gonna be too blasted, and then the next day there was 2 blasts, stuff like that. How do we avoid that, making those defined, hard comments, opinions, and knowing full well that it's not gonna be the case?
Oh, yeah.
That I see is something we definitely need to address, whether it's our purview or not. They use us as the vehicle.
Well, I mean, you can't make promises you can't keep, so to speak, so, I mean,
We are, but
obviously.
we talk about that
obviously-
light dome, that's why I
Well,
probed you
obviously, a
there.
developed piece of property versus an undeveloped piece of property, if they're gonna have parking lot lighting, it will have, but the whole idea of reviewing plans is to ensure that it's not lit up like a used car lot. And that sufficient lighting for the safety of the people who are utilizing the site, but it doesn't create undue glare and light pollution.
Okay. Yep,
And
no,
so I think that's the the best way you can answer a question like that as it pertains to lighting. You know, if you had neighbors around there, you're trying to assure them that, you know, they're not gonna be able to sit in their living room and read the newspaper at 11 o'clock at night from the lights. Well, that's one of the examples that from a McDonald's that got developed, where there was unshielded lights, and literally you could drive over there at night and bright light was blasting against this guy's house. So
I agree fully with all that.
Yeah.
I definitely agree fully with that, but having been on the developer side of the equation here, we did our photometrics. We had a big parking lot of whatever, when I was doing retail design or office planning and you had a big parking lot like that. We came up with our photometrics. We came up with the shielded lights. We lowered the light fixture down here. But in our heart of hearts, I know that there's going to be a light dome over it no matter what we do here. So there's I don't know how you tell the truth without appearing to betray the town. It's
oh,
Yes,
I mean, there is no answer. You just have to tell them the
a
truth.
light rendering will never work. I've done this for a billion years. I've had light renderers come up with things and images, and some of them are hand drawn, so that was a little bit of fake. But do it. You can do it. You can do the photometrics, but there's nothing like looking out the window across the harbor, and all of a sudden you see a light dome. It just will happen.
It's like the football field.
I'm a little concerned that we're retreading ground that was happening during the hearing, and we're
Yeah.
talking about substantive issues
Well, I think
here.
I'm taking it as the how do we
Process thing?
How do we?
I'm thinking about public
Yeah.
perception of our comments versus.
Yeah, Sarah, I see your hand up. We're just sort of having a nice discussion here from Chris.
It is past 9.
Okay, it
We're-
is past 9 and we're gonna have a couple of late night meetings. Sarah, do you have a quick comment?
I do. I would just really like to address the whole correspondence piece in general, because I've heard from many people, friends, I don't write letters to the planning board because I know they're not answered. Boards handle correspondence differently. Different boards handle them differently. Public comment is public comment. And if people are taking the time to sit in for 2 to 3 hours on a meeting and wait to the end of that meeting to possibly be allowed to speak, then that's great. And maybe their comment gets listened to and agreed with or not agreed with. If people take the time out of their day to write an email, it should definitely be acknowledged and brought up in the forum of the board it was written to. It's important for people's interest in the town to be on record, heard, acknowledged, and quite honestly, a lot of the times the board comes across as not very welcoming to the public. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just common knowledge. You're not flooded with 45, 50 people online for a reason, or having people in the room. That's just the way it is. People talk about it in town, that the board is not very welcoming. People get shut down all the time. It happens on different boards. But I think it's important to really realize that you're a very small minority of the town. You're a board, but you're a few people who got elected, not by everybody, but the residents in the town need to be heard, every single one of them. If they have a suggestion, an inquiry, a concern, it's important to definitely at least recognize it and bring it up. You don't have to read a 45-page email, that doesn't make sense. But just a recognition of the topic and maybe having some time to discuss further or point them to a direction where they can find the information online. But if you don't do that, it's a very cold feeling coming from a public, town government board. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will say that it's always been my intent to always take, if there's a hand raised, we do take it. I do try to limit comments sometimes to a reasonable amount of time and to try to channel them to things that we have not heard before. So also in respect for our time, and that outside of public hearings, comments are actually at the discretion of the board. You do not have to, we don't have to take any public comment, turns out, by state law. So we do, and it's hard to be welcoming and to answer everybody's questions and get out of here at a reasonable time. And we all do a lot of work behind the scenes. So it's a balance, and I think we don't always strike it, and we're not gonna please everybody all the time, unfortunately. But I do appreciate the fact that, I know, Sarah, you're a regular attendee and you sit through many meetings, so you're to be commended for that. Any other business for tonight? With that, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wait, I thought everybody was gonna, okay. All in favor?
So you got it.
Yeah. All right, thank you.